All right, ladies and gentlemen, the international webinar is about to start in a few seconds. Please stand by. Well, distinguished guests, honorable speakers, participants, and ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon.
Waalaikumsalam.
Tabi pun.
Ya pun.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Gede and I will be your moderator today. I'm so excited to be hosting this session, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's event. The first is the participants will be muted during the presentations for voice hearing. And please do not close your sessions. I'm afraid you will not be able to re-log in. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my warm welcome to our speakers, 10 guests from the University of Lampung, and participants to the international webinar EFL Online EFL Teaching and Assessment in the New Normal, hosted by the University of Lampung. As we know that the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a pandemic on March 2020. This is not just about a public health crisis, but it is a crisis that has an impact on every sector. And as we know that education is one of the sectors that is affected by COVID-19. In other words, because of the suspensions of face-to-face meetings in the classrooms due to the COVID-19 crisis, the courses, that had been carefully designed and planned for face-to-face classes are now exclusively delivered over the internet. Today we have two experts or speakers from India and Malaysia, 10 guests from the University of Lampung, and about 60 or 50 participants joining in this webinar on Zoom. And due to our limited space, actually we have the other participants who are streaming our webinar online live on YouTube. But I think there's some technical mistake with the YouTube, and I believe that our team will deal with it very soon. I believe that we are now aware that there is increased discussions around planning for the use of technology as a continuity plan for EFL teaching, learning, and assessment in most universities and schools around the world. Therefore, we gather here together to specifically discuss the online EFL teaching and assessment in the new normal. Ladies and gentlemen, before the speakers present the topics, I would like to invite Dr. Ari Nurweni, the head of English Education Study Program, Department of Language and Arts Education, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, to the University of Lampung to deliver a welcome speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ari Nurweni.
All right, thank you very much, Pak Gede Eka Putrawan. Well, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
The Dean of Teacher Training and Education Faculty, and in this case is represented by Vice Dean of Students Affairs and Alumni, Dr. Riswanti Rini. And then the next one, the Honorable, the Head of Language and Art Departments, Dr. Nur Laksono Eka Rusminta. And then the next one is all participants, teachers, lecturers, and also colleagues from our department, English Education Department. And the next one for our outstanding keynote speakers, Professor Dr. K. Padmini Shankar from English and Foreign Language University, India. Welcome to Indonesia. Nice to see you only through online. And then the next one, Associate Professor Dr. Hizam bin Zakaria from University Utara, Malaysia. Dr. Hizam, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Dr. Ari. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, and I also see participants who are senior professor, Professor Dr. Sujarwo, and also head of departments in our faculty, teacher training and education faculty. Tabik pun. Well, maybe for those who are not from Indonesia or not from Lampung, does not understand what is Tabik pun. Tabik pun is a special address which has a meaning about please allow me to talk, right? So when you heard Tabik pun is mentioned, so you have to answer ya pun, mean yes, please go on, something like that one, right? Okay. Well, in these special occasions in our seminar, international seminar, so I would like to say welcome to this international webinar, which is organized by English Department of Teacher Training and Education Faculty, Lampung, Indonesia. Right? Lampung is located at the bottom of Sumatra Islands. So if you haven't seen Indonesian's map, so you can go to Sumatra, and Lampung is located at the bottom of Sumatra Islands. Well, this seminar is attended by, there are about 1,379 participants registered to join this seminar. However, as Pak Gede already mentions, because of the limited capacity of the Zoom, so not all of the participants can join the Zoom meeting directly, but they can join through YouTube, right? So we are very happy because by many participants joining this webinar, meaning that we are able to achieve our first goal of organizing this webinar, that is to unite all EFL teachers, lecturers to be able to communicate one and another. And we expect that this seminar or these communications, these collaborations will not end just when this webinar ends. So we hope that our collaborations will be able to go on and we are able to form another collaborations, like for example, teachings, exchange program, and then webinar programs, and maybe journal article exchange from one university to another university or from one country to another country, right? And I would like to inform that the participants of this seminar coming from diverse or different places, even countries, different provinces, right? To mention some, from Aceh, Sumatera Utara, Jawa Tengah, Jogja, Bali, Riau, NTT, NTB, Kalimantan, Gorontalo, Sulawesi, Maluku Utara, Papua, coming from Indonesia. And then coming from outside Indonesia, I have to mention coming from India, Turkey, Algeria, Arab, Namibia, Singapore, Malaysia, Iran, and Bangladesh, right? So we hope that these collaborations can keep on for future events. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in these sessions, we are going to have two keynote speakers. The first one is Professor Dr. Padmini Shankar. He is going to present materials about EFL, online EFL teaching and also assessment. And then the next speaker, Dr. Hizam bin Zakaria, has a very sexy title. Title of his presentations is The Good, Bad, and Ugly of COVID-19 and its impact on EFL. Let's create, innovate, and exchange. So those are the two topics which are going to be presented by the two keynote speakers. Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today is the first day, and the webinar will be continued tomorrow, right? So I would not tell you about the topic of tomorrow, so that you are eager to come. So you should come for tomorrow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that by attending this seminar, we will be able to achieve the second goal of this webinar, that is to have the best practice of teaching English and also assessment, particularly during this new normal. All teachers are demanded to be committed and also creative, as well as being able to overcome the problem that they have faced during this time. And at the same time, we have also to make our students motivated to learn and also committed to be self-independent learners. Well, as we know that even though seminar on this kind of topic have been, conducted for many times, but I'm sure that this topic will not fade away, because the challenges in teaching and also assessing our students becoming more complicated and I think more demanding. As we know that now we live in a global life, we have to be able to communicate with people from different countries. It means that our students or Indonesian people should be able to communicate in English by having standard, which is accepted by international standard. So we as a teacher, we have to think about international standard when we are planning and also when we are assessing our students. So one of the international standard, which is called CFAR, Common European Framework of Reference, should be, not only understood, but we have also to analyze, to try, to implement in our teaching and also in assessing our students by referring to that international standard, so that we will be able to see whether our students will be able to compete or whether our students have met certain standard, which is mentioned, for example, in CFA, Common European Framework of Reference, which consists of level E1, E2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. And we hope that, for example, for elementary school, they have to reach, for example, level E1 and E2. And then for junior high school, for example, level B1. And then senior high school, B2 and C1. Okay, so we hope that this seminar will be able to, widen our horizons and also make the teachers, lecturers be confident in doing their work and able to motivate our students, make our students feel that learning English is not kind of something formality, but because the students need that for their future life. I think that's all from me, but before we end, I would like to, express sincere gratitude to several parties. The first one, of course, to our university, the dean, and also head of department who have supported this event happens. And then also, yes, I would like to extend my gratitude to my colleagues who are young lecturers. Pak Gede Eka, and then Novita, Rafista, Fajar, Gita, and then Ibu Lilis, and Budian have worked hard to prepare everything for this webinar. And then also this webinar will be officially opened by the Dean of Teacher Training and Education Faculty, but in this case will be represented by the Vice Dean of Students and Alumni Affairs, Ibu Dr. Riswanti Rini. So I would like to invite Ibu Dr. Riswanti Rini to give some word and also open this webinar officially. Last but not least, I am sorry if there are several weaknesses for this international webinar, and criticisms, suggestions are welcome for the betterness in the future events of international webinar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Dr. Ari Nurweni, for the welcome speech. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Riswanti Rini, Vice Dean for Students Affairs and Alumni of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, the University of Lampung, to deliver her speech and officially open this international webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Riswanti Rini.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Tabikun. Terima kasih untuk pada pertemuan ini. Yang terhormat Ketua Jurusan Pendidikan Bahasa dan Seni yang sudah hadir. Kemudian juga yang terhormat Ketua Program Studi Bahasa Inggris. And welcome to Professor Dr. K. Padmini Shankar from University Hyderabad, India.
Thank you.
And then Dr. Hisham Zakaria dari University Utara Malaysia. Okay, welcome in Lampung, but
Thank you.
only by online.
Virtually.
Ya, oke. Kegiatan seminar ini sangat luar biasa yang dilakukan oleh jurusan Bahasa dan Seni, khususnya Pendidikan Bahasa Indonesia, yang menggelar International Webinar Online EFL Teaching and Assessment in the New Normal. Dan peserta pada kegiatan ini yang dibagi menjadi 2 hari, hari ini dan besok, itu sangat luar biasa. Pesertanya itu sampai mencapai 1.300 lebih. Ini adalah suatu prestasi yang luar biasa di dalam melaksanakan kegiatan webinar. Karena ini isu yang diusung adalah isu yang sangat menarik, sehingga banyak peserta yang sangat tertarik dengan kegiatan webinar ini. Dan betul-betul menggambarkan kegiatan yang luar biasa karena peserta ini dimulai dari ujung Sumatera, Aceh, sampai ke Papua. Itu semua ada wakilnya, bahkan India, Turki, Algeria, Arab, Malaysia, Iran, Bangladesh itu juga menjadi peserta di dalam kegiatan seminar ini. Alhamdulillah semuanya bisa berjalan dengan baik. Semoga kegiatan yang akan berlangsung besok hari juga ini bisa berjalan dengan baik. Terima kasih kepada panitia yang sudah menyelenggarakan kegiatan ini sehingga sukses yang luar biasa untuk kegiatan webinar di program studi bahasa Inggris. Baik, dalam kesempatan ini saya akan membuka acara ini secara resmi dengan melafazkan Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Kegiatan webinar internationally online EFL Teaching and Assessment in the New Normal dengan resmi saya buka. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ibu Dr. Rizwanti Rini, for the speech and the opening. Now we are moving on to the main agenda, the presentations by the keynote speakers. I'd like to divide the presentations into two parts. The first is the presentations by the first keynote speaker, followed by questions and answer session. And the second is the presentations by our second speaker, followed by questions and answer session 2. Just a little housekeeping before we before the speakers begin their presentations. First, as I stated earlier, that the webinar is also available on YouTube, but due to some technical problem, I hope that our team is now dealing with it very soon. And please keep in mind that we will send you an attendance link that you need to fill out and then submit it to us to get your e-certificate. If you have questions, for example, during the presentations, please send them through the questions and answer panel on this software, on Zoom. Now, without further ado, I would like to turn the time over to Professor K. Padmini Shankar, the first presenter. She is a professor at the Department of ESL Studies, School of English, Language and Education, the English and Foreign Languages University, India. She is also Dean of Research Department and a Dean of Students' Dorm and Guest House at the university. She has been actively presenting papers at international conferences, both within and outside India. She is also an author of many articles published in in reputable international journals. And she has been publishing more than 15 books, course books and practice books. Now, in this webinar, she is presenting about EFL Teaching and Assessment in the New Normal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Shankar.
Thank you, Gede.
Yeah.
And good afternoon to all the participants and my dear colleagues and the other keynote speaker from Malaysia. Before I start, I'd like to suggest to Gede that the time given to the speaker is about 40 to 45 minutes.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
About 40 minutes,
yeah.
Around 40 minutes.
Yeah. But if there are questions which you will see on chat, okay?
Yes.
If there are questions which you think need to be addressed, we could pause after 20 minutes. Is that okay with you?
All right.
Okay, fine.
Okay, you have 40-minute presentations and then followed by question and answer session for about 10 minutes.
But we could even pause for a minute to answer questions if you think they are really pertinent and relevant to the topic that we are discussing.
All right. All right.
Okay. My God. Give me a moment. It's trying to share.
Yes, Professor Shankar.
Is it visible to all of you?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Excellent.
Right. Well, once again, good afternoon to everyone, my dear colleagues in the field of language teaching and all the participants who are attending this seminar. Warm greetings from India and EFL University. Hope all of you are safe and now ready for the webinar. For 40 minutes, I will be talking about the following things: creating positive classrooms, tasks for teaching LSR and vocabulary, and tasks for assessing LSR and vocabulary. First, about creating positive classroom environment. All of us are teachers, teaching across different levels, right? We all are aware of the need to create a positive learning environment. Why do we need to create a positive environment, whether it is online teaching or our regular face-to-face teaching? Why should we create a positive environment? Especially in a language classroom, creating a positive environment is essential because language classrooms thrive on interaction. If the classroom has a positive environment, learners will be encouraged to participate. So why do we create a positive environment? Because we want to maximize learner participation and learner contribution to their own learning. Because we need to provide learners the opportunity to use the language that they have at their disposal. That is how you learn. How do you learn a language? You don't learn a language by talking about the language or by appreciating Shakespeare. Like, will you learn guitar by reading a book about guitar? You won't. You need to play the guitar. In the same way, you will learn a language by talking in the language, listening to the language, speaking in the language, reading in the language, writing in the language. Therefore, we will talk about LSRW. All of us as language teachers know that language teaching is all to do with helping our learners use language skills, function in real life scenarios using language skills. Therefore, we want to recreate a learning environment in the language classroom such that our learners are encouraged to participate in language teaching and learning. So how do we do that? What is a positive classroom, you might ask me? What is a positive learning environment? A positive learning environment, in my view, is one in which learners are willing to participate. Learners are willing to take risks, to experiment with the language that they have at their disposal. They have no fear of failure. They have no fear of being ridiculed. They have no fear of being made fun of, which means it's a psychologically safe environment for our learners. Their affective filters, if you're familiar with Krashen, their affective filters are low, where they can interact with the learning input that you as a teacher are providing in a maximum manner. So your learning input and your activities will realize their maximum potential if learners are comfortable psychologically in your classroom. So what did we say so far? We said that language teaching and learning thrives in an environment where learners are encouraged to participate. Therefore, there is a need to create a positive learning environment. And how do we create a positive learning environment? That's the question. You can look at the screen. There are several ways in which teachers can create a positive learning environment. What are some of these? Let's look at one or two. Teacher shows respect to all the students. What do we mean by showing respect? This is more so in an online environment where we don't have a face-to-face facility to meet our students. How do we show that we care for our students? What does it mean to show respect? To show respect is to give them an opportunity to participate. First of all, to remember their names in a real classroom scenario, to be able to address students by their names, to be able to recognize their contribution to learning that is happening in the classroom, to be able to encourage them to participate in the classroom. So teacher shows respect. And of course, teacher is really listening to students, really listening, focusing attention on what they are trying to say. Teacher is patient. So there are several of these qualities that a teacher can have while creating a positive environment. Now, my question to you would be, when you're looking at the screen, try to think about how many of these qualities are innate, in the sense you're born with them, and how many of these qualities can be imbibed. You can train yourself to get them. And are there any qualities which fall in both the zones? For instance, the teacher is honest. Is honesty an innate quality? Somebody is born with, as an honest person, or you can develop being honest? Or for instance, has a good sense of humor. Are you innately a very humorous person, or can you develop that quality? What do you think? I would invite your views on this when we go to the questions part of the talk. But right now, I would like you to focus on the qualities that represent a positive learning environment. This is very important, especially in the new normal, when we do not have the opportunity as yet. Hopefully we will go there, we will get there eventually. Opportunity as yet to meet our students face to face. We need to be patient, we need to be fair, etc., etc. So having said that, now let me move on to, I think we have established quite clearly the need for teachers to establish a positive learning environment. Now let me move to tasks to teach LSRW. Teaching listening. Listening, someone said, actually I think I read it in one of Newnan's books, is called a Cinderella skill. Do you know why it is called a Cinderella skill? I'm sure we can guess. We know the story of Cinderella, right? The much neglected daughter. So it is not difficult for us to guess why listening is called the Cinderella skill. Listening has been much neglected by teachers. Generally, we assume that when students listen, they have already learned listening. But listening can not be learned like that. I do not know about you, but I remember my school days. I was never taught listening as a skill, to be honest with you. Now, of course, since that scenario is changing. So the point that we are making is listening needs to be taught explicitly if we want students to function effectively in real life context. So what are some of the measures that teachers can use to make listening an effective lesson? So I'm going to show you now 5 measures that teachers have adopted. Teachers like you and me, we teach listening day in and day out in our classrooms. I would like you to critically look at these measures and decide which measures are effective and which are ineffective if they are. Ready for that?
Yep.
Okay. Measure 1. What is the teacher doing here? Teacher shows a picture about the item they'll be listening to. So the teacher has introduced to the students what they are going to listen to. Okay. Next, what has she done? She has encouraged them to talk about what they think the topic will include. For example, let us say that I am showing you this cell phone, which means the lesson is going to be, the text that you're going to listen to you about will be on a cell phone, which means I have familiarized the topic of the text, listening text to you. Okay. And I'm encouraging you to think about what might be the content of the text. Okay. Now, what does she do? Okay, what does she do? She then urges everyone to say something by asking them to work in pair or small group. So the teacher has done 3 things here. Good teachers like you and me, you know, what have we done? We want to teach listening. So we go to class, we take a text to class, we want them to listen to our text. And before we make students listen to our text, what did we do? We showed them a picture. Now I have a cell phone here, that's why I'm showing you the cell phone, okay? She shows them a picture and she says that you're going to listen to a text about this item. Now you think what the text can contain, and in order to encourage them to think about it, she divides them into pairs or groups and makes them talk about it. So what has happened here? The teacher has successfully minimized the anxiety level of the students, because listening can cause a lot of anxiety in learners, because you're not going to listen to a second time, a third time, that's what they'll think. Even in one-on-one conversations, we don't have time to rehearse and then listen, right? It happens on the spot like this. So she has reduced their anxiety, number 1, listening anxiety. Then she has familiarized the topic. It's not rocket science after all, it is something that you're familiar with. And then she has, by dividing them into groups, she has made them bring about the language that they have. So now they are, quote unquote, listening ready. All right, okay. So therefore, I would like to say that this is a very effective strategy that the teacher has followed. Now let us move to the next strategy, next measure. What has this teacher done? This teacher, teacher B, has done some homework. She has taken care to find out and record how many questions each student answered correctly. Do you think it's a good strategy? Is it feasible, realistic in a class every day? How many questions each student has answered? Well, like in many teaching scenarios, in many teacher decisions, there is nothing right or wrong. As they say in literature, there's nothing right or wrong, it is thinking that makes it. So it is your judgment. If you have fewer students and if they are basic level students, probably you need to give them individual attention. But if you have a larger number of students, then on a daily basis, this may not be 1, feasible, 2, very effective. Let's look at one more strategy. What has teacher C done? This teacher has done something very interesting. She has taught her students enough language to ask a speaker to repeat. Come again, please. In natural conversations, how do we interrupt people? How do we ask for clarification? Oh, I couldn't get you. Could you repeat? Come again, please. Come again. Clarify or expand what they have said, or to speak more slowly. Do you think it is effective? I would say it is effective because in real life conversations, it is very natural. When I'm talking, suppose Gede doesn't follow something, Gede will put up your hand and say, Professor Padmini, could you repeat? And I won't find it odd at all. And Gede should not think that he has made a crime by asking me to repeat. Will you do that, Gede? I'm sure you won't.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is how teachers give the comfort level to their students. Because mind you, many people think that speaking is challenging. Listening is extremely challenging. As I'm talking to you, in a real life classroom, I know how many of my students are actually listening, really listening. I know how many of them are thinking about which movie to watch this afternoon. I know. How do I know? I know it. Well, my experience teaches me that they are there with me or not, but I can't see you now. Therefore, I don't know how many of you are actually with us on the webinar, but I'd like to think that all of you are there. So listening is extremely difficult. Suppose I want you to give me 3 points of whatever I have said so far. I'm sure the notes that you have is very different. So listening has its own set of challenges. So that therefore, this teacher, a wise teacher like you and I, has equipped her students with a lot of language that they will need to ask a speaker if they do not follow the speaker, right? Okay, now let us go to the fourth measure. Well, if you look at teacher 3 and now teacher 4, this teacher is doing something very, very nice. She has taken to class texts that have examples of natural spoken English, okay, which I will show you later in a task, how you can select such texts. Now, the text that she has taken to class has false start. What is a false start? We know, don't we? Okay, what is a false start? To put it simply, a false start is, well, you want to say something, then you start off saying, this afternoon we are going to talk about, no, I think, that's not what I want to say. So you have started something and then you revise it midway online, right? Okay, so false starts, hesitations, repetitions, changes in direction, midstream, ungrammatical and unfinished sentences. These are all part of natural everyday speech. In fact, if we were to look at the speech that is happening right now, you will find evidences of all these things in the speech that you are right now listening to. Yes? Okay. So this teacher has familiarized her learners with natural speech so that when they actually go to real life scenarios, they are well equipped with the kind of language that people use in real life context, because we anyway are aware that classrooms are simulated situations. We can only recreate real life context. Now let us move to the fifth teacher. Fifth measure. This teacher always takes care to speak slowly. What do you say about this? Is it an effective measure to teach listening, or is it not so very effective? I'll give you a clue. In real life context, do people always speak slowly? They don't, right? So if the teacher always speaks slowly, she would be denying her students the opportunity to get exposed to different kinds of paces that people speak into, right? So we have looked at 5 measures that teachers have used to teach listening. Now you decide. I have given you my views, and I would welcome questions on this when we go to the question answer sessions. I'm sure there are chats. I'm not able to see the chat window here, but I'm sure there are questions there. So we will get back to those questions later. But you be ready with your questions. So since we do not have much time, I'm now moving on to the next skill. We are done with listening. Now, teaching speaking. Well, speaking has always, if listening was a Cinderella skill, now speaking is the king of all the skills. Why would we say that? We say this because if you notice, when people ask you, do you know, for example, people ask me, do you know Bahasa Indonesia? What would I say? Of course, I do not know. Now, if I were to ask you, do you know Telugu, my L1? You would say, I do not know. What does knowing a language mean? Now, for a very long time and for all purposes, knowing a language means being able to speak in that language. Even if you do not know how to write and read in that language, that's the distinction that I'm trying to make. If you know how to speak in that language, you would say that I know the language, wouldn't you? Okay. Therefore, speaking has always been given a lot of importance. Now, I'm going to show you 2 activities which are very useful in teaching speaking. Look at activity 1. Now, in this activity, learners are put in pairs. Student A has some information. Student B has some information. This information is about the same topic, but the information that both of them have is different. A has different information from B. Now, they must not show their information to each other, but must ask each other questions in order to find out the missing information. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, so I'll show you the input for this activity A. Student A has this information. Okay, so you can see on the screen that some information is missing there. Now student B has this information. Okay, now student A and student B should talk to each other and fill in the missing information. Yes. Now there is, do you think that the communication that happens here would be genuine? I'm sure you would say that it will be genuine because they really want to find out something. Like for example, if I were to ask Gede, Gede, what time are we going to meet tomorrow for the webinar? Gede would say around 2 p.m. Indonesian time. Mark you Indonesian time and not Indian time. So that communication is genuine communication because I want to know something. There is some information that is missing here and Gede is providing me that information. So it is genuine, real communication. So the purpose of a speaking activity in a classroom should be, teachers should be able to recreate that genuineness in the language classroom. So look at this activity. Student A has some information which is missing, which B can provide, and vice versa. So when they talk to each other, they are really supplying each other the needed information. Therefore, this activity reflects genuine communication that happens in real life scenarios. Suppose you go to a hotel. Now, let's say that I am coming to Indonesia, Lampung University, right? Then I would like to know how I can reach the university from the airport. So I would ask Gede or the others, Fajar or somebody, how do I reach your university? What is the best way to reach your university? There, Fajar has or Gede has some information, I have some information, and then we are exchanging this information to make it a proper whole. So such activities, there is a name for these activities. I'm sure some of you know this. These activities are called, anyone can guess probably? There is a gap. What is the gap? Gap in the information that each of the participants has. So such activities are called information gap activities. These are very useful for recreating genuine communication opportunities in a language classroom. So I'll show you one more activity. Your questions on information gap activities you might reserve for the question answer session. Then I'm going to show you the second activity for speaking. Now, this is not a favorite activity for speaking, but I have chosen this precisely for this reason. Look at the activity. There are two variations in this activity. First, let us look at variation 1 and then we will reflect on these activities. Look at variation 1. This is a speaking class, mind you. What is the teacher doing? Teacher says he's going to drive the car. Students, what are they saying? They are repeating what the teacher says. He's going to drive the car. Now the teacher says bus. What do students say? He's going to drive the bus. Teacher says taxi. Then students would say definitely he's going to drive the taxi, and so on and so forth. This is one way of doing this activity. And I will show you the other variation in the same activity. Okay, teacher says he's going to eat the cake. Now students are repeating what the teacher is saying. What are they saying? He's going to eat the cake. Now teacher says coffee. What do students have to say? They don't have the whole sentence. So they would have to say, would they say he's going to eat the coffee? They would have to say he's going to drink the coffee. Now teacher says Mary. Then do students say, what do they say? They would say Mary is going to drink the coffee. They won't say he is going to drink the coffee. If you notice, teacher is changing what's the input every time. Now this time, what does the teacher say? What does the teacher say? She says make. So what do students say? Mary is going to make something. So they would have to say Mary is going to make the coffee. Teacher says beds. So what do students have to say now? Mary is going to make the beds, etc. So if you have noticed the difference between variation 1 and variation 2, you will notice several things. We will discuss them now. Let's reflect on these two activities. What is the name of the activity? Everyone can guess. These are drills. Okay. These are drills. Drills are repetitions. The teacher provides some input, students repeat that. Okay. And well, many teachers and researchers have kind of devalued the importance of drills in a language classroom. For them, drills are monotonous. They do not reflect real life, genuine communication that we were talking about so far, and they are mechanical. But I would like to differ here. Okay, let's look at the questions. Name the activity. It is drill. Now, in what way is variation 2 better than variation 1? Variation 2, if you noticed, has more scope for genuine communication because every time the teacher is providing input, she's changing the input. Okay, so it is not mechanical. Students really have to think in order to frame the sentence. In a drill, students generally repeat, teacher changes only one thing, so students keep repeating that. But in variation 2, teacher is changing several things. So students, it's not mechanical. Students have to think, so therefore they are able to apply their mind. So it is not mechanical, boring, dull repetition of teacher input. Now, the question is, I would like to also hear your responses. Should this activity have a place in the language classroom? Many people, as I said, do not value drills at all. They, for the reasons that I've just mentioned, that drills are mechanical, boring, dull, they do not engage you actively, etc., etc. They write off drills. But I would say, I'd like to differ here, and based on my experience for the past 26 years, which I have taught across levels from grade 2 to 4 to BA, undergraduation to post-graduation to research, I would still say that drills have a place in the language classroom because of 3 reasons. 1, drills offer the psychological safety that students would love to, especially when practicing pronunciation. Because you're repeating in a group, you don't feel uncomfortable. If you made a mistake, you will not be singled out. So that kind of psychological safety is offered by drills. Now, secondly, drills give you that practice that you need before you can talk about things on your own. You are in a group, okay, and you get enough practice. So what more do you want? Okay, and drills, if you are creative, and I'm going to show you some more activities where you can engage students with a lot of excuse me, with a lot of active engagement, where you can engage students with a lot of interest. Drills can be made genuine, like in the example that we have seen. So my response to this reflection would be, drills do have a place in the language classroom. Now we move to the next skill, that is teaching reading, which is my favorite.
Professor
Because
Shankar,
I'm a quote-unquote reading expert. I keep teaching reading to all the international participants. By the way, we have a program called the International Training Program, where we have participants from across the globe, non-English speaking countries. We have several students from Indonesia as well in this program. So we teach them LSRW for 12 weeks. Let us look at teaching reading. All of us are familiar with teaching reading, right? We have been teaching reading comprehension for so many years, and all of us have also looked at teaching reading comprehension. We have been students ourselves. You and I studied in schools and colleges, right? So how were we taught reading? We were given a reading text followed by questions. If I were to tell you about the Indian examination till school level, one for sure question. My second son is now 10th standard, CBSE, State Central Board of Secondary Examination. One gunshot question is unknown passage. Okay, there is a passage followed by questions. Now my question is, well, I'll show you how it is possible for students to answer questions without having understood the text. You're surprised? Yes, you don't have to understand the reading passage to answer the questions. Are you surprised? I'll show you that is possible. Okay, hold on. Please read this text. I would encourage all the participants to read this text. By the way, this text is from Pennier's book, A Course in Language Teaching. You will be asked to answer comprehension questions based on this passage, so please read it carefully. You're all good readers, I know. So you made wonderful sense of this text, right? It's clear? The text is wonderful. You are ready now for comprehension questions. So these are the comprehension questions. What was the Flester doing and where? What was the Flester doing? The Flester was Gollinging. And where? Begrund the Bruck. Right? Okay, next. What sort of Flester was he? He was a Palgish Flester. Why did the writer decide not to jot to him? Because he seemed very changeable. How did she de-apple? She de-appled him quickly. What did she hope he would happen later? He will be Santa Candor and she will be able to wrangle to him. You answered all questions, 5 marks on 5. Okay. Have you understood the text? Which language is it? Is it Bahasa Malaysia? Is it Bahasa Indonesia? What language is this? Have you understood the text? It's a nonsense text, we know. But have you answered the comprehension questions? Yes, you have. Will you get 5 marks on 5 marks? Yes, you will. So your 5 marks that you got on this comprehension, do they reflect your understanding of the text? No. So when our students answer comprehension questions, is there a guarantee that they have really understood the text and therefore they have answered correctly and therefore they have got their 5 marks? There is no guarantee. So what is the problem here? I will show you another text and I'll show you another set of questions. Now look at comprehension passage 2.
Sorry.
Gede, while they are all reading, can I just ask you how much more time do I have?
5 minutes left.
5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't gone to online. Never mind, there is always another day for that. Okay, now this is the second text. In fact, this is the actual text. And look at the comprehension questions below. What is the problem described here? Is this event taking place indoors or outside? How do we know? Did the writer try to get near the patient? What do you think she said when she called to him? What might the job of the writer be? Why do you think she wants to talk to the patient? Now, let us quickly look at reflection, and I'll leave you with some reflection. When Gede asks me to stop, I will stop. Gede, I'll request you to ask me to stop because there are several other slides, but I don't think we'll have the time. in what way is the second set of questions different from the first set? If you looked at the first set, they were all factual questions. Therefore, whether you understood the text or not, you were able to answer those questions. I'm sure you agree with me. The second point about the difference between the nature of questions is, in the first text, the questions kind of resounded the language and the vocabulary and the structure of the passage. Therefore, you just had to fill in the required words from the passage and you've got your answer. You didn't have to think because they resounded the structure and the vocabulary of the passage. Now, the second set of questions, will you be able to answer these questions with the first passage? Look at the second set of questions. What is the problem described here? Will you be able to answer this question with the first passage? You will not be. How were you able to answer this set of questions? Because what was the Flester doing? The Flester was gollinging. So the passage, in fact, the questions reflect the vocabulary and the structure of the text. Therefore, you're able to answer those questions. So my point here is that I'd like to very strongly drive home to all teachers is to set questions in such a way that they make it imperative for your students to really engage with the text. They shouldn't be answering questions irrespective of whether they have understood the text or not. For example, I'd like to show so what do we learn about reading comprehension? That questions have to be set in such a way that students can answer questions only if they have understood the text. Now, you might be wondering what this 5 is. Now, 5 is an acronym for the kind of questions that we need to set on a reading passage. What kind of questions? F stands for anyone's guess. It stands for factual questions. So in your 5 questions, if you have 5 questions or 6 questions, usually it's for 5 marks. But even when you are teaching reading, set some factual questions. And what does V stand for? I'll come back to I a little later. What does V stand for? Usually in reading comprehension passages, one of the questions is something like this. Which word in the text is a synonym of the word gigantic? Or which word in the text has the meaning of walking very slowly? So these are vocabulary questions. So V stands for vocabulary questions. And I stands for anyone's guess. What am I saying? Guessing, inferential questions. Like, for example, if you look at the second set of questions, what might the job of the speaker be? It's not explicitly stated in the text, but when you read the question patient, you can think that it may be a doctor, or it may be a nurse, or it may be a receptionist. So there are a whole lot of possibilities there. In other words, have some open-ended questions, not questions for which there is only one correct answer, right? Now, what does E stand for? E stands for 2 kinds of questions. One is evaluative question, and the other is experiential question. For example, I'll give you one example. Okay. Suppose you read, there are so many stories, right? So at the end of a story, you ask your students, is what the king did correct? That is an example of an evaluative question. And if you were the king, do you think you would have taken that decision? What would you have done in that place? That is an experiential question. That is an example of an experiential question. What is the value of these questions? These questions, especially experiential questions, make the students identify themselves with the reading text. They can relate, you are giving them a chance to relate to the reading text. Therefore, they are not likely to forget the information, and they are likely to engage with the text more actively and more meaningfully. Therefore, it is important to have a combination of questions when we set comprehension questions on a reading text. And the acronym for that is 5. Factual questions, inferential questions, vocabulary questions, and E stands for evaluative and experiential questions. Do I have to stop now or do I go to vocabulary?
Yes.
Stop now?
Yes, I think you're running out of time.
Yeah.
Professor Shankar, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Just give me one moment. This battery is running out and I'll take questions. Just give me one moment.
Right. All right.
Yeah, all right. I'm ready.
Yes. Now I would like to, would you please, are you stop, I mean, do you stop sharing screen, Professor Shankar, or what?
Yeah.
All right, you there. All right, thank you, Professor Shankar, for the interesting presentations. But I'm so sorry because our limited time, so you could not finish your presentations. Maybe a few slides left. And we have learned from Professor Shankar, I mean, about how to create positive classroom environment, actually. I mean, positive classroom atmosphere, and how to teach EFL skills like speaking, listening, and effective ways to teach your students or our students the English skill. We will now go ahead and take some time for questions. It looks like that we have questions in here. Give me some time. All right. Now this is from, I have no idea from, because it is, the participant did not mention his name in here. I have a questions, Professor Shankar.
Yes, please.
How should I encourage students, encourage passive students to actively speak in class or in speaking classes?
All right, this is a problem. Let me first congratulate the person who has asked this question, because this is a very familiar problem for all teachers teaching speaking. I think she has spoken for most of us as teachers. How do we encourage passive students? Number one, I would say, find out why they are passive. They are passive for two reasons. One, language reasons. Two, emotional, I would say, affective reasons. One, language reasons is they do not have enough language, or now the affective reason is they have enough language, but they are, well, like most of us, sometimes they are afraid to speak. Why are they afraid to speak? Because they are afraid of making mistakes. They are afraid of being made fun of by their friends, or they are afraid of the teacher looking at them, what a kind of a fellow, you don't know this much also. So there are two reasons. One, students may not have enough language, which means we need to give them more practice. Two, students do not have enough confidence. Therefore, the very first slide is creating positive classrooms. So if we give enough confidence to our students, and how do we give them? By telling them in so many words that making mistakes is normal, quote unquote. Okay, all of us do that. There's no harm in that. Keep trying, and you will be able to use the language that you have. So find out if your students need more language and give them enough confidence. For that, build rapport. the much used word in ELE context, create rapport in your classroom so that your students feel comfortable with you as a teacher and with their fellow students as peers, where they can contribute to each other's learning. I hope I want.
All right, thank you, Professor Shankar. I'd like to pick up one last questions, I think, because we have a few questions in here, but I don't think we can cover them all. I'd like to pick up one last question. So it is about, it is from Denny Kodrat. How important to select, hang on, let me check first. How important to select or choose the appropriate text, for example, so students do not feel discouraged when they read a text, or avoid them to consult Google Translate, for example.
How important to choose level appropriate text, right? That's your question.
Yes, yes. So it does not make students feel discouraged.
Yes, yes. See, the thing with choice of text is that one way to go about it is you do some needs analysis. Okay, you give kind of a test to your students to see in where they.
Hello?
Yeah, I was muted, so I unmuted myself.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fine. So in contexts where you have seen, in many contexts, there is a prescribed textbook. If you have a prescribed textbook, you don't have much choice. But even there, if your students find it difficult for some reason, always look for texts that are interesting to them and which are level appropriate. Okay, so that you can engage them in activities. So you need to adapt materials. Okay, you need to choose supplementary materials and adapt materials. Now, how do you know which materials are level appropriate? Give a short test to your students, a level check test. This is called a diagnostic test in ELE context. You give them a diagnostic test, you can place them where they stand in terms of their proficiency level. Then you choose your text, because if the text is too difficult, then it can be demotivating. If the text is too easy, even then it can be demotivating because it is not challenging enough. Okay, so it is therefore important to choose text where we have the freedom and to adapt text where we do not have the freedom. Does that answer your question?
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Shankar. Pak Denny Kodrat, is that answering your questions? Well, Bapak Denny Kodrat,
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bapak Denny Kodrat is from Bandung. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
All right, thank you, Bapak Denny. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Professor Shankar, for your presentations and the questions and your responses to those two questions. We still have few questions actually. However, it is hard for us to cover all of the questions due to time limitations. Well, thank you very much, Professor Shankar. Now we're moving on to our second.
Yes. Thank you very much. And all the best to all of you. All of us as teaching community, we are facing a huge challenge in the COVID times, but we will become winners, I'm sure. So on that note of hope and happiness, let me say bye to all of you and thank you, but I'll stay on. I'll stay on to listen.
Yeah. Please, you stay with us. All right. Thank you.